All right, strap yourselves in, everyone, because today
Ooh, sounds exciting.
it is. We're diving deep into, well, a bridge.
A bridge. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's not just any bridge, though. It's the Overtoun Bridge in Scotland. Ever heard of it?
Overtown Bridge rings a bell. Wait a minute, isn't that the one?
Yeah, the one with the creepy nickname.
Yeah, Dog Suicide Bridge. Right.
Kind of a dark name for a pretty picturesque spot, wouldn't you say?
For sure. So what's the story there? Why is it called that?
Well, since the 1950s, there have been tons of reports of dogs, and I mean a lot of dogs.
Like, how many are we talking here?
Hundreds, apparently, just jumping off this bridge.
Just jumping, like on purpose.
Seems like it. Some have survived, but sadly, a lot haven't.
Wow, that's so unsettling. Okay, I'm definitely hooked now. So what in the world could be making these dogs jump to their deaths?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's exactly what we're here to figure out.
All right, lay it on me. What kind of theories are we dealing with?
Well, the numbers themselves are pretty crazy. We're talking over 300 reported cases.
300. Wow. And how many of those didn't make it?
At least 50 that we know of.
That's just heartbreaking. But what's even weirder
It's not like they're being chased or anything.
Right, right.
A lot of these jumps happen on totally normal days. No storms, nothing to spook them.
Okay, now that is strange. So it's not just a random handful of dogs. It's hundreds over decades. And they're just leaping off this bridge, seemingly for no reason. Are there any patterns? Like, are certain types of dogs more likely to jump?
You know, there is something like that. It seems like collies, Labradors, and Retrievers are the most common jumpers.
Interesting. So we've got this picturesque bridge, a history of dogs jumping, and specific breeds involved. This is starting to feel a bit like a Scooby-Doo mystery.
Uh-huh. You know what? It kind of does. Minus the mystery machine and the meddling kids, of course. But you're right. There's definitely a mystery to solve here. To get to the bottom of it, we've got to look at the different theories that have been tossed around over the years.
Makes sense. Some based on, like, hard science, others may be a bit more, well, out there.
Exactly. Let's start with the science. One popular theory is that the dogs are being drawn in by a strong smell, specifically the smell of mink.
Mink. Really? Okay, what's the evidence for that?
Well, mink are known to hang out in the area around the bridge. And there have been studies that show dogs, especially those breeds we talked about, have a super strong reaction to the smell of mink.
Ah, makes sense. Their noses are way more powerful than ours, so maybe they're getting a whiff of mink and just following their noses right off the edge.
It's possible. But here's where things get a little complicated.
Oh boy, I was wondering when the twist would come in.
People who live near the bridge say there haven't been many mink around there for a while now.
Well, that throws a wrench in things, doesn't it? Does that totally debunk the scent theory, or is there still a chance?
Well, it's possible the scent is still lingering, even if the mink themselves aren't around as much anymore. Or maybe there's another animal that has a similar smell that's attracting the dogs. It's a part of the puzzle that researchers are still looking into.
So the scent theory might be on the right track, but maybe not the whole picture. What other ideas are out there?
Well, another leading theory focuses on the bridge's design. Some people think it's playing tricks on the dog's eyes, especially with all the trees and bushes around it.
A visual illusion, you mean? How could that make a dog jump off a bridge?
Think about it from a dog's point of view. They're much lower to the ground than us, and their vision is different.
Right, right.
So it's possible that the bridge's walls, especially with all the foliage blocking the view of the ravine below, look like they just continue on, like solid ground.
Ah, so the dogs might not realize there's a drop at all. That's a fascinating theory. Does it hold up? I mean, is there any evidence to back it up?
It's a good theory, and it fits with what we know about how dogs see. But like the scent theory, it's not 100% proven. There's no hard evidence that an optical illusion is the main culprit.
It seems like we're hitting a wall with these scientific explanations. So what about the elephant, or should I say the ghostly dog in the room? The supernatural theories, what do those have to say?
Okay, yeah, let's get into the spooky stuff.
Yeah.
Overtoun Bridge is in a part of Scotland known for its ghost stories and legends, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's lots of folklore and talk of the supernatural around there. And some people believe that the bridge is what's called a thin place.
A thin place. What does that mean exactly?
It's a spot where the line between our world and the spirit world is, well, thin. Like the two worlds are closer together there.
Oh, I see. So are you saying some people believe those dogs are picking up on something we can't see or hear? Like maybe some kind of spiritual presence?
That's one way to look at it. Some folks believe the dogs are drawn to the bridge by unseen forces, maybe even the spirits of other dogs that have jumped before.
Whoa, that's a little creepy. But Honestly, with all the weirdness surrounding this bridge, it's kind of hard to just dismiss that idea completely.
Right. It's a theory that's taken root locally, and it's definitely got that chilling factor. But, like with every theory we've discussed, it's important to approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism.
For sure. But it's definitely giving this whole deep dive another layer of intrigue. So we're back, and we're knee-deep in this Overtown Bridge mystery, still trying to wrap our heads around why so many dogs seem to just decide to take a leap of faith, so to speak.
A leap of faith, huh? I like that. We've got all these theories floating around, some more grounded in science than others, but where do we go from here?
Well, before we get too deep into the bridge's history, I'm kind of curious. Have researchers actually, tried to solve this mystery? Or is it all just speculation?
Oh, they've definitely been busy. It's not just armchair theorizing. Scientists have been out there at the bridge observing dogs and even trying to recreate the conditions that might lead to those jumps, trying to get some hard evidence.
So they're like setting up scent traps and hiding in the bushes with cameras.
Huh, not quite that dramatic. But they have done things like scent tests. They'll introduce different smells, including that mink scent we talked about, and see how the dogs react.
What did they find? Did the dogs go crazy for the mink smell?
You bet they did. The tests definitely showed that dogs, especially those breeds that seem most drawn to the bridge, have a powerful reaction to the smell of mink. Their noses are incredible.
That seems like pretty strong support for the scent theory then, right? But wait, didn't you say earlier that locals claim there aren't actually that many mink living near the bridge?
Yeah, that's the thing that makes this whole thing even more confusing. The tests confirm that dogs go nuts for mink scent. But if there aren't many mink around, well, that kind of throws a wrench in the works, doesn't it?
It does. So are researchers just scratching their heads at this point?
Not exactly. They're digging deeper, trying to see if maybe the scent is lingering, even though the mink population has moved on. Or maybe, just maybe, there's another animal with a similar scent profile hanging out around there that's attracting the dogs. It's an ongoing investigation, science takes time.
It sure does. So what about that other theory, the one about the bridge's design messing with the dog's vision? Any updates on that?
Well, researchers have really combed through the bridge's design. They've looked at the landscape around it, too, trying to find anything that might cause those dogs to misjudge the drop.
So far, no smoking gun, huh?
Not yet. At least nothing concrete enough to say that's definitely the main reason dogs are jumping. But you have to remember, dogs see the world differently than we do.
Right. Different field of vision and all that.
Exactly. Plus, they're way more sensitive to movement than we are. So it's totally possible there's something about the bridge's structure, how the light hits it, how it interacts with the trees and bushes around it, that creates a weird visual effect we humans just don't pick up on.
It really makes you realize how much we rely on our own human senses to understand the world and how much we might be missing.
True. But even with all the scientific research and theories, there's still this big question mark hanging over the whole thing. And we can't forget the people involved, the pet owners who've actually witnessed their dogs doing this.
Yeah, that must be absolutely terrifying.
Imagine the shock, the confusion. There's this story, for instance, about a man named Kenneth Michael. His golden retriever just bolted and jumped right off the bridge back in 2004. The dog survived, thankfully. But can you imagine what both he and that dog went through?
It doesn't bear thinking about. And I bet there are a lot of similar stories out there, each one a little piece of this big, heartbreaking puzzle.
Exactly. And when something this strange and unexplainable happens, people search for answers, right? They try to make sense of it. Some folks cling to the science, while others find comfort in something a little more supernatural.
Right. It's like the bridge itself becomes this focal point for all these different beliefs and interpretations. Which I guess kind of brings us to another piece of the bridge's story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. There's another event, another tragedy that's become intertwined with the Overtown Bridge story, and it adds another layer of darkness to this already mysterious place.
Okay, lay it on me. What happened?
Well, back in 1994, a man named Kevin Moy, he was struggling with mental illness, threw his baby son off the bridge. Horrific. The whole community was shaken, and it really cemented the bridge's reputation as a place of sorrow and mystery.
God, that's awful. And while that's obviously a separate incident from the dog leaps, I can see how it would add to the sense of unease surrounding the bridge.
Right. It feeds into the idea that maybe there's something dark or supernatural going on, like something beyond our control is influencing events at that spot.
It's definitely a lot to process. We've got these scientific theories, the research, the personal stories, and then this layer of tragedy and the supernatural swirling around it all. So where do we even go from here? What's the next step in our deep dive?
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure, but we're not done digging just yet. We've got to explore some alternative explanations too. And I think even if we don't find a perfect answer, this whole exploration can teach us something valuable, something about how we approach the unknown.
Well, here we are. End of the road. Still scratching our heads about Overtoun Bridge. Lots of theories, a ton of research, but that one, definitive explanation, it's still out there.
Yeah, that's the thing about mysteries, isn't it? Sometimes they just stay mysteries.
I thought by now we'd have like a big reveal. The case of the leaping dog solved. But it's almost like the more we learn, the more questions pop up.
Right. It's not just about finding answers. It's about how we deal with the not knowing.
You're right. Coming into this, I was all about that one, perfect solution. But now, I'm starting to think maybe there isn't just one.
It's a good way to look at it. Think about all the stuff we've discussed, the scent, the bridge's design, the dog's instincts, even the history of the place, the energy, maybe. What if it's all connected somehow?
Like, it's not just one thing pushing those dogs to jump, but a whole bunch of things all coming together at that one spot.
Exactly. A perfect storm, you could say.
Makes you wonder what else we might be missing.
Oh, I'm sure there's a ton we don't understand, especially when it comes to how dogs see the world. We've talked about their senses, how they're different from ours. But what if they're tapping into something we don't even have the ability to sense?
Like what? You mean like some kind of sixth sense?
Who knows? It's not crazy to think about it, though, right? We know animals can do all sorts of things we can only dream of. Bats with their sonar, birds using magnetic fields, some fish even feel electricity. So why couldn't dogs have a sense that's totally beyond us?
I never thought about it like that. You're blowing my mind here. And it kind of makes that whole dog suicide bridge name seem a lot less accurate.
Yeah, maybe it's less about dogs being suicidal and more about us humans just not getting it.
Maybe. We're so quick to slap labels on things we don't understand.
We love a good explanation, don't we? But sometimes the best explanation is that we just don't have one yet. There are still mysteries out there.
And maybe that's okay. Makes you appreciate how much is still out there to discover, right? It's like we're just scratching the surface of what we know.
Think about it. What if those dogs at Overtown Bridge are showing us something new about the world? What if they're sensing something important that we're totally blind to?
Wow. And maybe if we paid more attention, really watched how dogs interact with the world, we could learn something.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest lesson from all of this. Even if we never crack the code of Overtown Bridge, it's pushed us to think outside the box, to question what we think we know, to stay curious.
It's a good reminder for all of us. Keep your eyes open, folks, your minds too. You never know what you might discover, even in your own backyard.
Thanks for sticking with us on this deep dive into Overtown Bridge. It's been a journey, hasn't it?
It has. And who knows, maybe one day we'll revisit this bridge with some brand new information. Until then, keep exploring and keep wondering.